Hiya, peeps. From a few days ago, Sloan Rackmuth put an article on edfirstnc.org, which I came across, and I thought we ought to talk about it. The headline is as follows: Transgender toddlers treated at Duke, UNC, and ECU. For those of you who don't know, that's Duke Health, UNC Health, and ECU Health. Top medical schools in the state are now transitioning toddlers and training future primary care doctors on how to engage in the medical treatment. It makes my mouth dry. It makes my mouth go dry. There is a lunatic woman called Diane Arenshaft, who I believe, I'd have to have it confirmed, so don't take my word for it, do your own work. Diane Arenshaft, who was involved in the satanic panics years ago. She's at the root of this, I think. Clive may be a man. He knows a bit about this, Clive. The old Queen's Speech, okay? Duke Medicine opened its gender clinic, just to mention Alex Aharon, called gendermapper.com. You want to go and see how many there are? Go and have a look. I'll put the links in the dooperies. All right? Duke Medicine opened its gender clinic in 2015 to offer a wide variety of services under one roof. The clinic treats children as young as 2 for gender dysphoria. Dr. Deanna Adkins, a transgender activist who runs the clinic, said this about her toddler trans patients. In an interview with the Charlotte Observer in 2016, they are not old enough to consciously just choose to do that. It's not a choice in any of my patients. It's really an unpleasant thing to have going on in your body to feel that distress about yourself. I can't imagine anyone who would choose to do that. Oh dear God. In her expert declaration to a federal district court in North Carolina concerning HB2, Adkins stated from a medical perspective, the appropriate determinant of sex is gender identity. The appropriate determinant of sex is gender identity. This is pure on religiosity. They're watching the child, they're seeing what the child does. They're gender policing the child's behaviour. Do they like the pink? Do they like the blue? And when they see enough balance on one side, they are setting toddlers on a transition pathway that leads to sterilisation and a multitude of health problems throughout life, and a boondoggle for pharma companies and doctors like this. And they are doing so based on the idea that it is more likely that a boy that likes pink is going to be gay. It's homophobia, but it's also deeply steeped in gender role models of what a woman and a man should be. Profoundly right-wing, profoundly eugenicist, profoundly unethical, a medical scandal, the likes of which we've never seen. Adkins argues that gender identity is not only the preferred basis for determining sex, but the only medically supported determinant of sex. This is the human body as a mould for a soul. It's a religious cult. Every other method than having gender identity as the only determinant of sex is bad science, she claims. It's counter to medical science to use chromosomes, hormones, internal reproductive organs, external genitalia, or secondary sex characteristics to override gender identity for purposes of classifying somebody as male or female. Is this, go and have a look, is this a spoof? Is this propaganda? Because if so, it's been put together very well. A few miles down the road at the UNC Health, another one, UNC Health, children as young as 3 can be evaluated for gender dysphoria. The clinic states it practiced gender-affirming care. Now, when people say gender-affirming care, what they mean is conversion therapy for gays and lesbians generally. That's what it means. It's gay conversion therapy for confused kids. That is conversion therapy. Gender-affirming care is conversion therapy. On its intake form, there's a picture for the intake form. Go and have a look. It asks for pronouns, gender identity. It's just... Interested parents are assured on their website that a team of psychiatrists, endocrinologists, doctors, family doctors and surgeons will collaborate to affirm their child's gender. How eager is UNC Health to affirm gender, i.e. chemically sterilise and castrate children? So eager that its medical school residents offer cross-sex hormones for free every third Wednesday. ECU Health recently jumped on the bandwagon and opened its own Pride clinic. Seeing children of all ages, the activist who directed the clinic, Dr. Colby Dendy, said this in an interview with the East Carolinian. The literature tells us after kids can start around age 4 having their gender identity, so we do not want to exclude anybody within the paediatric realm. A big part of our goal is to provide affirming primary care to everybody in the LGBTQ+ spectrum. Pure, unadulterated, disgusting, nauseating homophobia. A majority of ECU Health family medicine doctors indicate they are trained and ready to accept an influx of patients on the centre's website. My worry is that's what the NHS are doing. Dendy and her colleagues at ECU published a recent paper calling for doctors and clinics to push puberty blockers and hormones through telemedicine and school awareness programs. They are drugging your children. And they are using the systems that are set up to safeguard and protect them to do it. A month after the doctors at the ECU Pride Clinic published the paper, the school received $3.2 million for the telepsychiatry program for school children. All of these institutions offer intensive therapy sessions for children wishing to change gender with conversion therapy. Duke Dr. Deanna Adkins explained how she treats youngsters. Before puberty, treatment does not include any drug or surgical intervention. For this group of patients, treatment is limited to social transition, which means allowing a transgender child to live and be socially recognised in accordance with their gender identity. That's the iatrogenic harm that was mentioned by Cass right there. This can include allowing children to wear clothing, to cut or grow their hair, to use them. I mean, to them, you are a walking stereotype from being a toddler. These people are mentally ill. Social transition is a critical part of treatment. Yeah, I know what the treatment is. Treatment of patients with gender dysphoria of all ages, and it is the only treatment for prepubertal children. They want to get them as young as possible so that it's too far for them to turn around and go back by the time they get to the puberty blocking phase. This is a flesh sacrificing cult. It's that simple. I know it's harsh. It's hard to imagine, but it is a flesh sacrificing cult. And it's in the middle of our societies, and people aren't saying anything. A recent study published in Pediatrics examined the 5-year gender identity development trajectory of transgender identified children who underwent early social gender transition. 5 years later, at the average age of 11 to 12, almost all, 97.5%, continued to identify as transgender. So if they can convince children, right? 5 years. So this was kids as young as 4 and 5 they were doing this to. So if they can convince these kids by getting everybody around them to lie about the reality of their life, 97.5% of them are still buying it by the time they're 11 or 12, and bang, they're on the blockers. You ghouls! A small subset developed a non-binary identification. They are absolutely driving these kids to mental insanity. Insanity. They are driving children insane. This is a massive red flag. A massive safeguarding red flag. And the majority of these children will be gay and lesbian. It's conversion therapy. Another study conducted by the left-wing American Academy of Pediatrics reports that once children socially transition at an early age, they will generally remain transgender at 5-year follow-up. This means the 4-year-old who was brainwashed to believe he was born in the wrong body will remain confused and depressed at age 9. These doctors and clinics know that by catching children and their families at 2 or 3, they can generate enormous amounts of cash because patients will likely rely on lifetime education. Legislation to ban this practice now sits in the North Carolina House and Senate. Please call your representative, email them to report, and urge them to protect the youth, to pass the Youth Protection Act. If you believe in transgender ideology, if you believe in gender identity ideology and queer theory, if you believe in any of that, if you think there's such a thing as true trans, right? If you think there's such a thing as these poor people that need, if you believe any of this, and that those poor people are anything but the true existence of who they are, somebody with a mental condition they need to deal with. If you believe that trans women are women and trans men are men, then you are in bed with them. It's not complicated. So let's not complicate it. There are not two sides to this. There is only right and wrong. Gender identity doesn't exist, it's personality. Gender expression is fashion. These people are trying to get to your kids by using queer theory and by duping gullible left and liberal people into thinking that this is the next gay movement, when it is anything but. It is homophobic and misogynistic to its core, and it invokes the idea of a spectral soul that sits in the sac of the body, which it can then shape the body to fit the spectral soul, which is based on what they think you should be like. If you believe one iota of this nonsense, if you say that gender identity is real, you are in bed with these people. You can't partially have the plague. Now clean house.